Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our show tonight. I am Andrew Howell, the Marion and Bill Palm Music Director of the Chorus of Westerly. Thank you for joining us for this show and for all of the support that you have given and continue to give to the Chorus of Westerly. We would not be here if it weren't for your support and for the support of the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts and the Blue Mitten Thrift Shop. We have a great show planned for you this evening where we will take a look at the world of body mapping. Our guest tonight is Jane Murray, who already wears a number of hats for the Chorus of Westerly as our first oboe in our orchestra and as our orchestra contractor, the person who brings our fabulous professional orchestra together for each of our concerts. Jane runs a private oboe studio at her home, as well as teaching at the University of Rhode Island. She plays oboe and English horn with the Rhode Island Philharmonic, and of course our orchestra, and is a certified body mapping educator, which is what we have her here for tonight. So welcome to our show, Jane. It is great to have you with us.
Hi.
Hello.
I thought you all might recognize the back of my head more than you recognize the front of my head, because most of you are staring at me from up on the risers.
That's right.
But
thank you. The audience gets of me.
Thank you for having me. It's really lovely to be. I wish I could see you all because I miss you all so much. But I know you can see me, so.
We're so happy that you joined us tonight. Thank you for putting on a different hat tonight and coming in this this exciting discussion.
It's lovely. It's so nice to see that you're still maintaining a connection with your people. It's so hard to do, and I miss maintaining connections with my colleagues in the orchestra. And, you know, we would have been getting ready for a concert at this point. And so it's lovely that you've been able to keep your family together.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm honored to be part of it.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Jane. We're trying really hard, since we can't do the things that we normally do, to still give people something in a new way. This, in a very special way, has opened up some new doors for us, as in tonight having this discussion with you. So it is exciting, some of the things that are being developed, and then some of the things that we're doing is just for fun and complete nonsense, but that's all for good things.
Oh, we need that too, though, right?
Absolutely.
There's not enough nonsense going on.
Yeah. Well, so we're here to talk about body mapping, and I'll say that almost every person that I mentioned what the topic of tonight's talk was first giggled, because they had no idea what I was talking about, and body mapping is just a great term. But it was very obvious that this is not something that many people really know about, and certainly should. So what exactly is body mapping, and what brought you to it in the first place?
Well, it's interesting because the term body mapping is actually from neuroscience. If you read any it's actually I do read neuroscience books. I know I'm quite a nerd, but it is you know, small b small m is the idea that you move in a way that you think your body is designed to move. And because much of our body is stuff that we can't visually assess, we may be mapping in a way that does not reflect the truth of the anatomy. So body mapping, capital B, capital M, is a curriculum that actually was developed for musicians out from two Alexander teachers, William and Barbara Conable, who taught, I think, in Ohio. But I think they realized, anybody that's had any experience with Alexander knows that it is a significantly hands-on treatment. It's almost like going to a chiropractor, where they, you know, they help you with your, I don't know what you call it. I'm going to say energy zone, but that's probably not a technically Alexander word. But as college instructors, they realized really quickly that this is not what we were able to do. We cannot do this in the way that we would if you were an adult going to a practitioner. You know, if you have a client who is paying you for their services, then yes, they've basically given you permission to use your hands on them. But in the studio situation, that we can't do that. So they developed, from their understanding of Alexander and their certification as Alexander teachers, a way to use the tenets of Alexander and deliver it with images and models and discussion, rather than, here, I'll do that, here, feel that.
Yeah.
So that's really what body mapping is. So it is a neurological term for how we perceive ourselves, but it is also, like I said, capital B, capital M is the body mapping for musicians curriculum that the Conables developed, which is what we've all studied and learned how to teach.
Gotcha. What a loaded concept, right? Self-perception is such a tough thing.
It is. It is. And it gets us into trouble. And I think what the Constables realized in dealing with conservatory level musicians at the colleges where they taught was that so much of the musical issues that their students were running into were based on faulty somatic principles. And the solution was always given to you from your teacher that you just have to practice more, instead of understanding that the way that you're practicing or the way that you're using your bow or the way that you're breathing is what's giving you the trouble, and not lack of time spent doing it.
Yeah.
It's, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Right.
So it's really kind of brilliant, because the idea is that you figure out how to do what you're doing in the most efficient way, and therefore you spend less time practicing, and the result is better. Yeah. So it can be a pretty magical thing.
Yeah. I will say probably the first time I heard of not body mapping, Alexander technique, was when Richard Marlowe was bringing his choral scholars from Trinity College in Cambridge.
Mm-hmm.
And they were incredible musicians, and effortlessly sang beautifully all the time. But I asked them about their training, and one of the things that every one of them got weekly was an Alexander technique lesson, as well as their voice lessons. So they were getting that side of it there, which is, absolutely brilliant. It certainly worked for them. They were already at a high level, but it allowed them to just do it with this free effortlessness that was quite wonderful.
That's one of my big words. I have a whole list of words that I have on my wall, and effortless is one of them, because it's not the language that we use in the studio. The language that we use in the studio is you have to do this more, you have to do more of that, you have to, but instead of making it easy, here's my easy button.
That was easy.
The idea is that how can you use I have a great quote. Use only the amount of muscular effort needed to accomplish the task. That's a good mantra.
Yeah.
Because trying harder or working harder is what makes us hurt.
Right.
So learning how to work efficiently, effortlessly, there's a whole bunch more words on the wall. I'll send them if you want them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But again, it's the way the words that we use really matter, because they, especially if we're teaching, I know many of you are teachers, the words that you choose to use make such a difference.
Right.
So
there's such a focus in practicing as a musician, as a student, in getting in the time, when, as you say, a lot of it is overusing that time, and making it more efficient is definitely the way to go. Making it as easy for you as possible, as smooth as possible, is so much more important than just putting in the time. And as you say, doing it, 10 times each and then moving on to the next section.
And you hurt.
Yeah, reinforcing bad habits.
I like to use the word task-based practicing rather than time-based practicing. Because especially with young kids, if you say, okay, I need you to be able to do this, if you can do it the first time, you're done. You can go watch TV.
Right.
If it takes you 50 times, then we have some work to do.
Yeah.
But instead of saying practice for a half an hour, I mean, we can all kill a half an hour with our instrument in our hands and get nothing done, right?
Yeah.
So it's a difference in the way you think about the job. But the other thing that's really important to say, I think, is that if you look at, for example, professional baseball players, if anybody watched the game, not that I did, but my family are big baseball people. How long a career is that person expected to have? 30, maybe 35?
If you were looking for a real answer, I don't watch any sports. So
so you and me both, but I think there are people out there that will say, okay, Tom Brady's 45 and everybody thinks he's ancient. Well, how long do you want to be doing what you're doing? I want to be doing it a lot longer than I am. Yeah. So it's really important that we learn how to do it in a way that doesn't hurt us, because we're looking for 20, 25 years longer than a professional baseball player with much less income.
Right.
So it's really important.
For the chorus members who want to be able to do this well into their 70s, 80s, I mean, singing should be a lifelong joy and something that you do through all ages. So the more you can do to help yourself be able to do that for, as long as possible, the better.
Right. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how old you are. You can understand that your perception of your body can be adjusted because the brain is plastic. So you can really train yourself to move or use your body in a different way.
Yeah.
You're never too old to do that. It's really important to understand that.
Love it. That's great.
So how did I get into it? Well, as I left this out so I could show everybody, this is the English horn, which is the instrument that I play in the Philharmonic. I have to get, in order to get the whole thing in the shot, I have to move way back. But when I play it, you can see that it's really quite a bit lower. So this arm is at a really bizarre angle, and I have really small hands. So in order to rest this instrument on my thumb for the hours and hours and hours that I've been doing it, I've been in the Rippo for, this would have been my 41st season in Rippo, if you can imagine that.
Wow.
That's a lot of hours playing the English horn. And I discovered that there was something going on with my arm, and I tried acupuncture and I tried massage therapy, and I got the electric stimulation, and I had every glove and every wrap and every support system that they made to try to alleviate some of the chronic pain in my arm. And I ended up going to a workshop given by Stephen Kaplan, who is one of the body mapping training teachers. He's an oboist from Las Vegas. And I was looking for something to present to my pedagogy class that I teach at URI, because I always tried to include something that had to do with health and wellness in the course. And this was a course advertised as what every musician needs to know about the body. And it was being taught by an oboist. And I thought, okay, I'm in. And it was one of those light bulb over the head moments, because it was the entire 6-hour workshop, which is how what we are trained to teach is a 6-hour course, what we call WHAM. And there's an hour on balance, there's an hour on arms, legs, breathing, awareness. So you can divide it up any way that you see fit. But that's kind of the entire curriculum fits into this 6-hour window.
So
and I went
1 a.m. tonight is what you're saying.
Oh, you're not getting the whole thing. That's way TMI. People will be asleep. But when I went, it was life-changing, because I realized that the problem was not what equipment I was using. The problem was how I was using it. And when I came back, I also had a history from late high school to right before grad school. I helped support myself by coaching gymnastics. So I was a gymnastic teacher and a gymnastics coach. So the idea of analyzing body movement was kind of in my vernacular already. I just had never thought to apply it to this.
Right.
So it made perfect sense talking about aligning your bone, because I was a beam coach. And it's like, if you don't have your head in balance, you ain't staying on the beam. It's that simple. So it really was one of those things where I came home and I said, I have to learn how to teach this. The training process was not in place yet. They had not started figuring out how they were going to train people to do it.
Wow.
So I started on my own. I took anatomy at URI through the nursing school, and I took lessons with as many body mapping teachers as I could find. And there weren't that many. There were only about 4 at the time that were, within a day's drive. But eventually they got their act together and they got the training program, and I got in. It took about 8 years. But then I got my license, or I got licensed. We used to be the Andover educators, but they realized 2 years ago that not only did nobody know what body mapping was, but if we didn't even call ourselves the Body Mapping Association, what were we? So they changed it a couple of years ago to the Association for Body Mapping Education. So now I'm an ABME now.
All right.
So awesome. I can put the letters after my name. But that's what led me to it. And like I said, it just became something that I felt really comfortable doing. And the more I learned, the more I wanted to know. And so here I am.
So for those of us who are just kind of learning this for the first time tonight and what it's all about, what does it actually take to see a difference in the way that you inhabit and feel your body and understand yourself? What does success look like in body mapping?
That's a very interesting question. And I'm not sure that there's an easy answer to that, because it depends, number one, on your willingness to really understand how you perceive your own body and make the changes that are necessary to affect the desired result. The other issue that is going to be very difficult tonight because I don't have access to the people that are watching, is you can hear the difference.
Mm.
And sometimes you can hear the difference instantly. And that's very motivating, because if you sound better, you're going to want to continue doing this.
Right.
And that's what I will miss, because you all will have to assess whether you're hearing a difference in what you're doing or feeling a difference.
Right.
So I thought we would start with the feeling part of it.
Great.
Because the audio part of it is not accessible.
Sure. Well, that's a wonderful segue if you want to get right into it and get people moving.
Okay, well, what I want to do first is I want to ask the first thing that we talk about when we do the first hour is awareness, because it's very important that you are open to noticing things that aren't specifically about the music. Mm. So the first question I like to ask, and you have to be my guinea pig to answer the question because I don't have everybody else available, but is, when you are driving a car, are you looking straight ahead?
Sometimes, most of the time, but also trying to be aware of what's around me. Yeah.
That, what he said.
Yeah.
Okay, so wait, do you want your pilot to be looking only straight ahead?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. So part of what we're doing, first of all, is just everybody, wherever you're sitting in the room you're in or wherever you're standing, I want you to take in the entire space that you're in. One of the issues I think we have as musicians, especially instrumentalists, is that everything's in front. The instrument's in front, the music's in front, the conductor's in front, the audience is in front. And it's really easy to get sort of a sense of sort of tunnel vision without understanding, is the sound only in front?
Right.
No, of course, the sound is 360-degree thing. Right. So being aware of the space that you're in is really the first step. So if anybody wants to make a comment about what they just noticed as we do this, I also was suggesting to Andrew that having a place to write things down, you may find nothing tonight, or you may find a number of things that you want to remember to try to apply to your living or your music. So it would be a good idea to have some place to write stuff down. You can also ask questions of me, or you can email me questions later, but try to have some place to record your comments. So now that we've taken a little bit of a assessment of the space that you're in, let's come up with something. I asked Andrew, I'd like you all to, because you're all singers, I'd like you all to have something to try out my little suggestions as you sing. So you can sing anything you want. You can sing a scale, you can sing Happy Birthday, you can sing, something from the Brahms Requiem, which I wish I could hear you do. Just come up with a little line that you can sing as we try different things. Okay? So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to sing your little song with your eyes closed. Actually, just sing it once in your space. Everything normal. Are you going to sing, Andrew?
I figured if I sing, it'll get in the way of what they're singing. Otherwise, I would.
They can mute themselves. They're already muted anyway.
They have to mute me.
Okay. Hopefully you're done. I have no way of knowing. But I would like you to do it again with your eyes closed. And I want you to notice if anything feels different when you do it with your eyes closed. So we're essentially taking the visual sense out of the picture. So sing your song and see if it feels different. Does anybody have a comment? Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to get up and we are going to, depending on how much space you have in your room, you're either going to march in place, or you're going to run, or you're going to do some jumping jacks for about 2 minutes. Let me time 2 minutes. Ready, set, go. I just want you to move as much as you can for a minute.
Are we singing while we do this?
No, you're going to sing afterwards. So don't forget to breathe. And if you can't jump, you can do just something that gets your body moving.
didn't think this is what tonight was going to be for me.
Okay, and then sit down and catch your breath, or stand up, whatever you're doing. Catch your breath, and then sing your sample now.
If you're singing happy birthday, you can sing to Jane because it was her birthday on Friday.
But only once. We don't need to wash our hands. So take a minute when you're finished and think about if any of those things felt differently to you. Did the singing change? Did the sound change? Did you notice any difference in how your voice worked when you had added movement in before you sang?
We have a comment that says, well, I sang on key. The one says, I like it with eyes closed best. And Audrey Cardney says, happy birthday.
Thanks, Audrey.
Audrey also says, seemed like I could breathe more easily. Voice got much stronger after jogging in place, from Jennifer Chaffiot.
So you see what I mean about how it can make a big difference, and it's not 10 hours in the practice room working on your phrasing?
Right.
So one of the first questions that we ask in hour one is fill in the blank. Musicians blank for a living. Type in your answers for me so I can see some answers.
Ooh.
Musicians blank for a living. What do we got?
Nothing yet.
I got teach. Anybody else? Sing, drive. I get waitress. I've gotten all sorts of answers, but I'm not seeing any more answers. Anybody else want to participate? Okay, so what if I asked you, what do dancers do for a living? How would you answer that question?
We've got perform and create.
Okay.
Breathe, play music, sing.
But what if you're a pianist? You may not sing. Make copies.
Make copies, yes.
So what about an athlete? What if I asked you what does an athlete do to make a living?
Ooh, we've got
yes, that's the answer that we all do. But isn't it interesting that it isn't the first thing that comes up?
Mm.
So if you're singing, if you're playing the violin, if you're playing the organ, are you not moving? You may not be moving in ways that are as obvious as a major league pitcher's moving.
Right.
But without movement, there is no music.
Yeah.
And that's really significant, and it should be the foundation of our teaching.
Mm.
It should be where we start. Because Andrew and I have spoken about this. When you observe little kids, they understand the naturalness of movement. They haven't yet learned to restrict their movement the way we have learned. So acknowledging that movement as part of music. I mean, isn't it part of a course that you guys teach for little kids?
Music and movement, absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
So it shouldn't have to be separated.
Right.
Music is movement. So I think moving is a music skill that we ignore. Exactly. That's beautiful, Audrey. Thank you. So if you're in the audience and you're watching the orchestra, you may not see the movements, but they're micro movements. But without the movement, we don't make any music. So understanding that the anatomy is what creates the movement is sort of the basic tenet of body mapping. Mm-hmm. So what I wanted to talk about, Andrew asked for questions in advance, and some of the questions that came back had to do with standing on the risers for a really long time. And I understand because I sit in front of you and I feel your pain and your heat and your cold and changes. And that is a really stressful part of singing in the chorus. So I thought perhaps I would do a little bit of a body mapping unit with you on how to effectively stand in a more dynamically balanced way so that you can apply these things as you're getting ready to go back and sing with your friends.
Great.
So I'm going to screen share now because I have a question for you. And here's my Here's my screen share. My question is, did you get it? I don't see it. Dave? Where's Dave? No, I'm not seeing it.
There we go.
Nope, that's not it. That's not it at all. This is what we want to share, Dave. There it is. We want that.
Ooh.
What's going on, Dave? Where'd the share go? Okay, I'm going to stop and try again, okay? Share. We practiced this and everything. All right, I got it now. Ah, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay, how does she do that? Anybody? She does that because her head is in balance. And that is one of the most important things about, believe it or not, we can't stand properly in balance if we haven't dealt with our head. So the first thing I need to show you, and you may have one of these around the house. If you do, go get it and pick it up, because this is the average weight of a human head.
Huh.
And if you're not paying attention to that heavy item that's at the top of your body, you're asking the softer tissues of your body to control it instead of asking the harder tissues of your body, which are the bones.
That's way heavier than I would have thought.
That's why some people use a bowling ball.
Wow.
But it's not as easy to find a bowling ball around your house unless you're a bowler. So I carry one of these because it's really astonishing how heavy it is.
Yeah.
And if you're not balancing that in a way that allows the spine to accept that weight, the muscles of the neck are what's accepting that weight. And the muscles of the neck are going to fatigue and get sore and get tired. Whereas if we allow the spine to carry that weight, we free up the muscles of the neck. And if we free up the muscles of the neck, we free the jaw, we free the vocal cords, and everything is happy.
Mm.
It's much easier. So how do we do that? Well, we need to understand where the head and the spine are jointed. And that is at the AO joint. So if you think you know where on your body, your head is hard with the headphones. Let me take them off for a second. If you put your fingers in your ears and you point slightly down and imagine where they would touch each other, that is the point of the AO joint, which is the joint where the skull and the spine are jointed. Now, you may not have understood that that's where, hold on, I got to put my headphones back on. You may not have been aware that that is where the pivot point is. So the AO joint allows for this and the AA joint allows for this. So a little bit of yes and a little bit of no. And just experiment with that a little bit. You can try, I like to use sharp and flat because we understand that. So if we go flat and let the head drop forward, you can feel the muscles of the back of the neck helping to support your head. And then if you go sharp and you do the same thing in the opposite direction, you can feel that the muscles of the neck are trying to help. And if you try to find that place of no strain or the place of no work, as we like to call it in body mapping, is that where your head is when you sing?
Typically not.
Exactly. So I think it's important to understand by using my skull model here, where the spinal cord comes into the head. Because I think for most people, they have a mismapping is what we call it, about where that joint is. They may think it's further back here. Most people don't think it's further up here, but for many people, they think it's further back here. And if you look at where the hole is, you can see why it matches up so nicely with my spine.
Mm.
So that's the first thing I can help you with in terms of being able to stand in dynamic balance, is to balance your head.
I feel, just to come in for a second, I feel like I am very often commenting on the way that we hold our music up and then go into our music, which sets us up immediately, as opposed to finding that position and then bringing our music up to ourselves.
Or look at your music with your eyes and not your head.
Mm.
Can you look down? Yes, you can. Do you need to add your head weight as well when you understand what it does to your neck muscles?
Yeah.
So it takes a little bit of practice, but it's absolutely possible, and it's much more comfortable. It's just unusual for people. So those of you that are at home, you might want to try walking. Or if I'm in a classroom, I'll do this. Everybody walk in a circle and just try a little bit of extreme flat and extreme sharp with your head, and then find that place of neutral and walk with it and see how it feels. See if you notice any difference. It's something that you can do not just when you're making music. I do it when I'm hiking. I'm a big hiker, so I'm always trying not to look down at the roots. It's really tempting to do that, but it's where I practice. Walking upstairs is another one where I practice, or driving in a car where I practice, just to make sure that I'm demonstrating good head balance. Does anybody have any comments for me before I go on? Any questions about this? Is anybody noticing anything? Okay. There's also a good video on my website about this. I made a couple of videos right at the end of the first week of lockdown, because I saw that everybody was looking into their computer screen like this.
Right.
So I made a head balance video. The other thing I love to use is one of these. Mine happens to be a Walter White because I'm a big Breaking Bad fan. But if you can just imagine having a bobblehead, it's another image that helps. Again, imagery is what we use to substitute for the manipulation. So anything that you have that will help you find this sort of neutral, comfortable place, you'll start to notice. The thing that's really crazy is when you're working with instrumentalists, is their intonation gets better. It's hard to explain why, it just does.
We do actually have a couple of people asking about progressive glasses.
I have progressive glasses.
Does that have any effect, or is there a way around that?
I'm not sure what do you mean. Does it have any effect? I have I have to argue with my eye doctor all the time about how much magnification to give me at the bottom, because again, I'm a reed maker, so I have one pair of glasses that is music distance and reed making distance, and she thought I was nuts. She did. She's like, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, trust me, this is what I need. I don't need this for regular life. These are special glasses. These are my purple glasses. And they are what I use because the distance from the music stand, again, the distance from the music stand for an instrumentalist is one of the things you have to adjust. You also have to adjust the height of the stand. And I have, what I'm using for you guys right now is this really cool desk that I got that has a hydraulic lift on it, so that I can always have my computer at a level where I am not doing this.
So and for our singers out there, you need to get lenses that are this close for your music on the risers and conductor distance away.
That's what I have. I know. And your eye doctor will think go to Dr. DeGiulio at Lens Crafters in Warwick, because she kind of gets it now. I've explained it to her that this is just a specialized thing that I need. And she, she's like, fine, whatever. But all along the road, people were like, are you sure? Are you sure this is right? Because it was so not what they're used to. Anyway, so let's move on, because the next thing we have to understand, if we're going to be able to stand in a comfortable state of dynamic balance, is that the spine is not a straight article. And if you were in one of my classes, I would hand you a body outline, and I would ask you to draw in your perception of the spine within an outline of the body, so that I could see where you thought your spine was. So I don't really have the capacity to see what your answers to those questions would be. But what I want to show you is that the spine is very curved. And here's my spine model, which is the big version. So what I want to show you first is that at the top, we have the cervical vertebrae. Those are the ones that are inside the neck. And they're smaller, and there are 7 of them, and the discs between them are very small. And then we have, and they curve this way. So if I put my head on top, okay, wait, yeah, that's right. Okay, so they curve forward. And then the next row of vertebrae are the thoracic ones, and those are where the ribs connect. Let me get my little skeleton over here. I know I have about 16 different skeletons.
Jane is always ready for Halloween.
Oh, I love going to all the shops after Halloween and get all the really stupid skeletons on sale, so I can show my students like, what is wrong with this skeleton? I have lots of them. I have one I'll show you later. Okay, so these are the vertebrae where the ribs attach, and that's why they curve back. So this is the part, if you were to lie on the floor, this part of your spine would be making contact with your head, but the cervical vertebrae would not because they curve the other way. Mm-hmm. And then the lumbar vertebrae are the thicker ones. Everybody knows about the lumbar. The older you get, the more you know about your lumbar, right? And those are much thicker. And again, they curve in. And then the sacrum vertebrae are the fused ones that are at the bottom and make up the back of the pelvis. So why is this important? Oh, the arm always falls off. This is important because if we try to make our spine straight, we are mismapping. And the other part of our bodies, the muscles and the connective tissues, are having to compensate for the mismapping of the spine. So if we can understand, and I'm going to have to put up another image here. Dave, are you with me? Here comes my other image. Hold on, I got to go.
Make sure to share the application so we don't see
Yeah, I figured that part out. Sorry about that.
All right, no, I'm sorry about that.
Okay, here's the next one. Here's the next slide I want to show you, because it shows you that the AO joint that we talked about earlier needs to be aligned with the lumbar vertebrae. So if we're sitting or standing in balance and the lumbar vertebrae are not lined up underneath the AO, then we haven't delivered the weight appropriately down. Okay, so one of the jobs of the spine is that it takes weight from above and delivers it downward. But lining it up allows us to do that without engaging muscle. Mm-hmm. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now. So those are the only images I'm going to share because I feel like the spine misconception, mismappings of the spine are so incredibly common. So one of the ways that, one of the things I try to do is I have you lie down on the floor on top of a pool noodle, now that everybody's closed their pool, so that you can feel the top of your head against the noodle. You can also do it against the floor, but it's not as comfy. And you can feel the thoracic vertebrae against the noodle, not the cervical vertebrae. And then you feel the base of the pelvis against the vertebrae, against the noodle, but not the lumbar vertebrae. And if you're sitting in a chair, this is a really great opportunity to try to find that balance of the AO joint over the lumbar. Now, if you're not sure where the lumbar are, go for the side seam of your shirt, because that's about the center. Honestly, this is the core. I know the fitness industry would have you think that the core is in the front, but your core is actually like the core of an apple, and it should be considered that way because it is central to your body. And if this is going to line up with it, that mapping has to be accurate. So if you find the side seam of your shirt and you sort of go in towards your belly button, that's where the lumbar vertebrae are, but understand that they're curving forward. So how do we deal with that when we're standing? Well, we stand up. And let's try standing up, seeing what happens in the pelvis when we ID the AO joint and the lumbar curve. So I know that you guys like to talk about locking knees and unlocking knees. And what I'd like to say without being too contradictory is that there's absolutely nothing wrong with locking your knees as a means of stopping yourself from falling over. It is what you need to do. If somebody came over and pushed you, you might lock your knees to keep yourself from falling over. But what happens when you lock your knees actually is that your pelvis goes forward. And that is why it is not beneficial to singing. Because when you've locked your pelvis forward, you've changed the ability of your diaphragm to do what it does, which is to move this way. So the locking of the knees is not so much about the knees, it's about the pelvis. So now you can the other one I'm going to attack here is the whole, how far apart should your feet be? So what are you going to tell the choir about their feet, Andrew?
Shoulder width apart.
Okay. So if we actually take the shoulder, which again, where is the shoulder really? Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? That's a whole nother lecture.
Huh.
That's the arm hour. But again, that's too vague an instruction. What we really want to do is find the hips. Find your hips. Do a squat. Put your fingers right in where the crease is, and put your thumbs on the outside where that greater trochanter bone is. Hang on, where's my guy? Here he is. You see this bone right here? That's what you feel when you're palpating the side of your leg. But if you look at where the hip joint actually is in relationship to that, it's quite a bit in, and it's much further, well, not much, but it's quite a bit further closer together than your shoulders. Mm. So if we do a little sample of, let's sing our song with shoulder distance apart. Head balance, try out head balance, lumbar balance. And then try hip distance apart and see what feels more stable. Anybody? Andrew?
So
it may be unfamiliar.
Yeah.
But hip distance apart is more structurally sound.
As in, normally we're aiming too wide?
Correct.
Ah, interesting.
Correct. And again, what's happening in your knees when you are wider?
There's more pressure on them because they're not lined up and down.
Yeah. And remember that the angle, without getting into too much detail, the angle, his arms keep falling off and I keep putting them back on, but it's actually easier if I don't have them there. The angle of the legs out of the hip joints is not straight up and down. It's an arch. It's kind of like a Notre Dame Cathedral. It's more supportive as an arch. So it's not straight. The pelvis enables the structure to deliver the weight down to the feet, but not via a straight line. It's an arch. And that's why hip distance apart is more stable.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay, so Dave is saying, do we want to bring Laurie on yet?
Are you ready to go right in and
sure
do a one-on-one?
I mean, do we have any questions?
So we did get a comment, shoulder makes me tense. Shoulder width apart makes me tense.
You see, you're starting to be aware though, aren't you? It's all of this, you know what I call it? I call it holy jargon. All the stuff you've been fed, don't lock your knees, open your throat. All that stuff is holy jargon. And if you filled, and I have to tell students this when they take my course, because they'll go back into their private lessons and they'll hear it again. You need to filter it through what you now know as the truth of the anatomy, because the anatomy doesn't lie unless you don't pay attention to it. As soon as you're aware of the truth of the anatomy, you can make just enough adjustment to get a positive musical result. And that's what we're driving at. It's all about the musical intention and informing the musical intention. And I haven't said that yet. And I'm sorry it's taken me this long. But really, we have to bear in mind that that's why we do this. We do this to improve the music, and it will. Is anybody noticing any changes in their song when we do any of these things? We got any thumbs up? Anybody? It might be too early. Okay, let's bring in Laurie.
So we've got a guest coming in now. Laurie Jones has agreed to join us and be the guinea pig for Jane. So thank you for being here, Laurie.
Absolutely. Laurie. I'm happy to be here.
So Laurie, what have you got so far? Anything that lit up a bulb or anything that resonated with you in particular? No pun intended.
Definitely mentioning the shoulder width as opposed to the hip width, or hip width as opposed to the shoulder width. That's huge. I even recently, I've just been noticing that the advice that I've been giving my own students I'm like, that's too far, because they're doing, they when you tell them to do that, they do it.
That's why the language is so
Sure.
important. It's amazing how much destruction we can do with our words.
Right.
It's kind of terrifying.
Being a teacher is terrifying.
Especially now.
But I think too, Jane, this whole series of time with Zoom and everything is just highlighting everything. And I mean, like, even my husband is just walking around in pain, and we're just lurching towards those computers. It's just, and so I've been talking to him about find the bobble place on your, because I remember that session that you did really early, Andrew. Was it you or George that brought in the Alexander technique lady? I remember that.
So I was taking Alexander technique lessons for a little while from Elizabeth Huebner and Willimantic.
That's right.
You know, like a body whisperer. It was very hands-on, which is the difference between body mapping. And I would walk out of there feeling like a new human being. So I brought her in, and she did do a session with the chorus.
I remember. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is great, Jane. Thank you so much. But yeah, for me, it's just the hips are always in pain, especially after a long weekend.
So let me say one thing to everybody, because I'm already noticing, as I said before, the way that you're looking at the screen is this. So if you watch the news and you see all the people being interviewed, you can see the people that have figured out that they need to put their computer up. And then you can see what I call the nose view people, who are sort of looking down at their screens. So if you're doing enough of this, you really need to make some accommodations in your equipment, which is why I bought this really cool desk that goes up and down, so that you're not forcing yourself into that position, especially if you do it a lot. So get some books, get a pillow, set yourself up in a place, put it on a music stand, just get it up higher so that you can stay in AO balance as much as possible. Because that right there is going to have, it's like the South is at the mercy of the North in a way. If the head isn't balanced, the rest of the body really can't find its alignment, and it can't deliver the weight to the support structure. So the head is really the first step, even though it doesn't make sense that you start at the top. But if you understand what we're doing, it really does.
Well, and even you're saying just be aware of what's around you.
Yeah. Take in the space.
Not just here. Yeah.
Sometimes with students,
huge. That was great. That was awesome.
Sometimes with students, have them turn around. Sing to the back of the room. Have the chorus turn around and sing to the back of the room. No, I'm serious. It's really powerful. Because again, we're so focused on what's happening here. And when you just mix it up and you enlighten people to the fact that the sound goes everywhere, it makes a difference. Okay, so Laurie, what we haven't gotten to yet, and what I was hoping to get to, so this is going to work in well if you don't mind, is we're going to talk about feet. Okay. Because we talked about the spine's job is to deliver the weight. So if you're sitting down, what's holding you up? There are no wrong answers. When you're sitting in a chair?
Yeah, your core.
It's your core. Oh, what's your core? Were you paying attention before?
Yeah, I was, but
okay.
I think it's like from the sacrum, right? It's from the sacrum from the pelvis. I don't know.
Okay. So You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say the chair is. Because as soon as you assign the responsibility to your body, you have tension. The weight goes to the chair. The weight goes to the floor. So that's the first thing I want everybody to try, is to just change your awareness about standing up, and don't think about delivering the weight to your leg muscles or your feet. Let the floor do its job. So try that on for size and just tell me how it feels to let the weight be. And again, we're not talking about being driven into the floor. I know some people like to use the word grounded, but I find that pulls you towards the floor. And one of the things, there's a wonderful book called The Hugh Manual by Betsy Politan. I don't know if anybody knows about her, but she's amazing. And I've just gotten about halfway through her book, and she talks about feeling upward off the floor.
Yes.
So letting the floor support you by allowing you to feel upward, but not pulling it, just allowing the floor to do its job, which is to hold the weight. Now, how do we do that effectively? Well, we have to understand a little bit about the foot. So here I'm going to pull up one of my favorite stupid skeletons from Halloween, because this guy has what we call the L-shaped foot. Can you see him? He's a Gumby skeleton. He's really fun. But can you see what's wrong with this concept of the foot?
Yeah.
Anybody?
It's flat-footed.
Yep.
Yes. What else? Okay. Can you? That's that. Can you stand the way he's standing with your weight all back on your heels? And tell me how that feels. What's engaging to keep you from falling?
Abs.
Again, there's no right or wrong answer here, but something is, right? Muscles are engaging to keep you from falling, because the heel, the ankle joint is not at the back of the foot.
Right.
The ankle joint, let me get my guy here. That's why I need so many skeletons. The ankle joint is about 2/3 of the way back from the toes. And that is a very important thing to understand about the foot.
Yeah.
Is that if we're giving our weight to the back side of the foot in order to stand up, the muscle, the soft tissue is doing the work. So what I like to show you with my larger foot model is what I call the three, or what we call the three tripods of the foot. So if you look at my foot model, you can see, and I borrowed this from my dog, he's kind of mad at me, to see that there's really an arched section in here, again, depending on how much of an arch you have in your feet. But that ball fits right into that space. And so there is an arch that goes from the base of the big toe, the ball of the foot, back to the heel bone. And that's a little bit of an angle here. It goes like that. And there's another one that goes from the ball of the pinky toe to the other side of this big fat bone, which is called the calcaneus. And the other one goes across the balls of the feet. So if we can use that tripodic foot the way we would use the tripod of a music stand and find our balance, again, you're going to have to add in your AO joint balance and your lumbar joint balance, but all of a sudden, the floor is doing the job.
Yeah.
Can you feel the difference?
Yeah.
So let's try, let's do our flat and our sharp, just so we can find that neutral place. So if you put your weight on your toes so that your toes have to catch you, can you feel what muscle groups are engaging? Yes, there are muscle groups engaging or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Neck.
So so there's all sorts of stuff that's helping you not fall over. So, but if we go back, we already did the one where we go back on our heel and we put all our weight back there. So now lift your toes up and let the weight be distributed along the tripods of the foot. You can even wiggle your toes in your shoes. Does it make any difference?
No.
No. The toes are there to propel us forward when we walk. That's what they're for. So I feel like this can be so helpful for those of you that are standing for long periods of time, because you're allowing your knowledge of the anatomy to change how you stand and how much effort. Remember what I said before, using only the amount of muscular effort needed to accomplish the task. What is the task? Standing.
Right.
Okay, how much muscular effort do we need to stand?
But yeah, so much, right?
Not so much. Again, unless somebody's pushing you.
Right.
Unless,
Is there something about the floor of the risers though that's different?
how could it be different?
Proximity to the people around us.
Maybe that's it.
That we're locked into small areas.
Yeah, I teach on my feet all day long, and it doesn't hurt me. Like for some reason, a weekend on in a riser position.
But you can also, while you're teaching, move around, right? As opposed to the risers, where you really are forced into that position and have no option of a different place to go.
I think that's a big contributor. Yeah.
And also what you're doing with your arms. I say this all the time, forgive me. Singers never know what to do with their arms. It's one of those things we do in masterclass all the time, because do I put them here? Do I put them here? Do I put them here? You know, do the Sound of Music. They just don't know what to do with their arms. And again, that is born out of a lack of understanding of the arm structure and how it attaches to the body, which I don't think I need to go into. I don't want to do that one now. It's a lot more information, unless you want me to keep going, because that understanding of how the arms can be floating on top of your torso can really help you when you're in a position where you have to have them holding your music for a long time.
I think that actually would be really useful, just in regards to being in this position and how to not have that tension because you're just stuck like this the whole time.
Yeah. Okay, well, you want to take like a couple of minutes break and let everybody get up and walk around a little bit? And I will call up a couple of more screenshots.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Because I need to go to a different PowerPoint for that.
Yeah, I think people would love that.
So everybody go get a glass of water.
So one of the things that I'm noticing right now is that even just the few things which we've been talking about, the AO joint and all of that stuff, just allowing yourself to feel it is even difficult. To say, all right, what is it? Because we don't check in with our bodies. We don't at least I don't, and I think a lot of people don't. We don't often think of how we're doing the things that we're doing in daily life, because we're just living. We're doing the things that we're doing, and we force ourselves into whatever position we need to be in, rather than trying to actually be aware of how we're using our body and how much effort we're using in those simple daily tasks, like standing. How we might be standing in a way that is making life harder for us than if we were to just get our alignment set. But we're so busy with other things going on in our head that we're not checking in with our body. Do you find that, Laurie?
Oh, absolutely. I think that mindfulness is a huge piece of it. I mean, when I started doing yoga about 7 or 8 years ago, that helped me so much, because I really thought about how do I feel right now? How does my fingers feel? Just like thinking about yourself. You just don't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Yeah.
That's why hour 1 is called awareness. And it's an entire hour of awareness exercises, because we don't. In Alexander, they call it habit. It's all about inhibition and recognizing that our bodies have habitual patterns,
right,
that don't necessarily serve us well.
Yeah.
So recognizing them, and again, I think the thing that I love about body mapping is that the anatomy doesn't lie, but we can't see a lot of what we use. So having the bone models and having the images and having the PowerPoints there to really drive home the misperceptions or the mismappings that we all have can really can spur some profound changes. Okay, so
would you say that just one of these of being able to be aware of at least how you're holding the music while you're singing can make an enormous difference? It doesn't have to be a complete structural change to your body. I remember giving the full WEM, the whole 6-hour course, to a colleague of mine, one of our trombone players, Mark Weaver. And I remember he sent me an email saying, "Oh my God, it took me 3 weeks, but I finally feel it." Because it's so much information that, right, number one, when we pick up the instrument, we go right back into what we've done before. Or when we pick up the music, it's like our habit takes over. And it takes a long time to check yourself in a way that you can start to allow change, especially if it's one of those things that I was telling Andrew earlier. I had to do this. I did the entire course for the Navy band,
And I've never had a harder audience because they are so set in their ways of doing everything in a rigid military way. It was it was the hardest one I've ever done. And I've done a lot for a lot of different groups, but those people were tough because they felt that they had to they said, but we have to stand like this. I said, no, you don't. You have to make it look like you're standing like that.
Yes.
But that's not the same thing. So there's a lot of perception and habit that has, that you have to be aware of. But I think going in small, it's like I love teaching at a university because I can do a unit, like one day a week, we introduce some things and then the next day we try it all out. And it's so much easier to digest it when you're doing it in small increments. It's a lot of info for the one-day workshop.
And not just the information coming in, but the information that you have to take out of your own body.
Correct. Because everybody's going to process different things in different ways.
Right.
So it takes time.
Yeah.
And that's why I thought it would be a good idea to suggest that people have a notepad, because they may not even realize they had a question until next Friday.
Do you suggest working with a mirror, Jane? Like being able to, because what we feel like we're doing, maybe we're not doing.
Well, again, it depends on what you're trying to deal with, because if you're dealing with being front centric, the mirror is just going to exacerbate that problem. Right? So it really depends. I have my students look in the mirror when I feel like what my students have issues with, and what some people do, is the arms too close to the body, which we're going to talk about a little bit, and they don't notice that they're doing it until they look in the mirror. But again, it depends on what issue you want to address. It can make it worse if you're leaning towards the mirror to look at what you're trying to not do.
Understood. Yeah.
Okay. So on to the arms. Okay. So once we have achieved a level of dynamic balance with the AO and the lumbar, and we didn't really talk much about the hip joints. Again, that's a lot more information, but I feel like at least you now have an idea of how to try to use the floor to give you a sense of dynamic balance upward.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go too much more. Yeah.
And when you did that, it was like it was almost like I felt buoyant on the floor suddenly.
That's another one of my words.
Yeah.
I love that you guys are saying my words. I love that. That's my favorite one. I always say, pretend you're playing on a boat. Pretend you're singing on a boat. Because you have to have a sense of dynamic movement or you're going to fall over on the boat, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's one of the things I use. One of my favorite words is buoyant. Thank you so much for using that. That's so exciting. Okay, so once we have that, and again, I didn't put his arms back on, but once we have that sense of balance, then we need to figure out how the arms fit in. And one of the biggest misconceptions, and the reason that I love the arm hour so much, it's something that I have to do because I'm dealing with people that are holding instruments. So it's really crucial for instrumentalists. But the idea of how the arm is constructed is really almost universally mismapped. So the first thing that we use is we use the word shoulder. And the reality is that there is no actual shoulder. There is a region that is comprised of the upper arm bone or the humerus and the shoulder blade, the scapula, and the collarbone. And that comprises the shoulder region. But it really is the place. If I asked you where the arm is jointed to the torso, what would you say?
Well, it's ball and socket. So, yeah, it's just cartilage that's holding it in there, and tendons. And
where's the joint?
It's a ball and socket, so it's not a joint, right?
Well, it is a ball and socket joint, but it's not jointed to the torso.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's jointed to the torso at the end of the collarbone. That's the only joint that connects the arm to the torso.
In there?
Is the end of the collarbone. Can you find the little notch in your sternum?
Yeah.
That bump right there, that's the end of your collarbone.
Okay.
So that's why pitchers can do what they do. That's why backstrokers can do what they do. So let's say put your left finger on your right bumpy collarbone and reach up like you're pitching or backstroking and feel it move. Feel it right up, right to, as close to your ear as you can, Andrew. As close to your ear. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Remember I was telling you about the kids on the jungle gym?
Right.
We were talking about this morning. So the 6-year-old kid was this, and the 9-year-old kid was this. Okay, because they understand that that's what the arm is capable of doing, and so you want to allow it. And when we do it in teams, you can have one person put their hand on your shoulder blade so that they can feel it move too, because that's what comprises the shoulder area: is the shoulder blade, the collarbone, and the humerus. And once we understand that that's the only place they connect. So there's another holy jargon that we hear, which is shoulders down. What happens when you press your shoulders down is you compress the nerves that run underneath your collarbone. Has anybody ever had numb fingers? The nerves that control the fingers insert at the cervical vertebrae. They come all the way from here, all the way down to there. So if we're pressing our shoulders down, we're pressing our collarbone down. And we're adding stress onto those nerves, which is where the numb, tingly fingers can come from. So that means that we really need to do a whole lot more backstroking to really feel the rotation of the collarbone and the movement of the shoulder blade forward and back. So the shoulder blade does this and it does this. It doesn't just sit there on your back protecting your lungs. The shoulder blade is a really kind of a miraculous thing. And I think for most people, they don't understand that part of the shoulder blade is the joint with the humerus. There's 3 joints here: sternoclavicular, glenohumeral. There's a whole bunch of them. You don't need to know the names. But the model has a little metal saddle that holds it all together, which gives you a false sense of the structure. But the shoulder blade, this little part of the shoulder blade, is actually on the very top. You can feel it. If you feel this little spine thing, the spine of the scapula, which sticks out, if you follow that up, it goes all the way over the top.
Yeah.
So now we can start and bring our music and allow all sorts of space between the arms and the torso because they float.
So would you recommend that as kind of an exercise if you're trying to find your position?
Yeah, that's what I have my kids do. I call it assembly from above. It's like, okay, balance your head, balance your torso, find your lumbar, bring your instrument to your balanced head from above. Because again, our habit is to go from here. So we do assembly from above all the time. So you could bring the music down from up rather than up from down.
Which for a lot of singers is probably going to be also a much higher music position. Obviously, you need to be able to look over the top of it as well, but instead of the against the belly leaning over like it's going to set you up in a much higher position. So
space between the arms and the torso, it doesn't have to be a lot of space because you're not putting your hands in the same position that an instrumentalist would be. You can separate your hands more. Right? Depending on how the folders work. I'm not exactly sure how they work. But you don't have to have them lifted up too high. The idea is, let me just share this because I feel like this is an important. Now, this is an image of the torso from above without the arms. Dave, are you with me? There it is. Can you see that? There's no head. We're looking down. And we have, I don't know, can you get the cursor? Oh, you can. So this is the collarbone right here. And it goes out and it joints with the shoulder blade right here. And you can't see the humerus because I don't think it's in the picture. But the idea is that it's the same width, shoulder to shoulder across the front, as it is shoulder to shoulder across the back.
That is a good visual that way.
Isn't that a good visual? Because I think for most everybody, we're going to shorten it. And we're going to think we've got more space in the back and less space in the front. And that's part of the trouble. So I think if instead of thinking of just arms, if we can really expand the consciousness of the shape of the torso and the dimension and the similarity of the dimension front to back, then finding the right position for the arms isn't so much about the arms.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
We try to sometimes hold it way out, like that's good, you know, if we're like out here, but then we're like super
right. And I think when you do that, you're engaging the muscles in the back. And again, the idea is to not engage any muscles at all if you can.
One of the comments that I'm seeing is about the fact that we don't have much room on the risers. Now, I think Laurie and I are giving ourselves a little bit of room here, but our arms don't want to be up like that. We can still have them down at our sides and be in a good position,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
I mean, we have a little bit of existing space on the risers, but not very much. But it is about finding that balance and bringing that to your music, right?
And I think your awareness of the expansiveness and the similarity of the space front to back doesn't take up any more space on the risers. It's the idea. It's the concept. And when you do, I mean, just put your arms down by your sides for a second and just think about that and see how it changes. And then just lift up your music.
Right.
So it's not so much about getting your elbows and poking your neighbor. It's more about not needing to.
I think it's the zoom view a little bit. It sort of enhances this angle. So it's not really that far out from me.
Yeah.
It's not that far. Yeah.
So again, it's something to experiment with. But as I think I said in the beginning, I may not have said this yet because it's something I say all the time, is that the issue is not generally where you think it is. So if you think that the issue is my hands don't know where to go, think about the expansiveness of your torso and the shape of your torso. And perhaps that being conscious of that instead of this will kind of take care of the problem.
Yeah.
That's what I find is that, you know, people always say, I have a problem with this. I have a problem with my lower back. I said, well, let's talk about your feet.
Right.
Because really that's more likely a change in your concept of how you're standing on your feet is going to alleviate the problem in your back instead of saying, okay, let's talk about the back.
Yeah. Jane, so we're running a little low on time. One of the things that I wanted to make sure we got to is you had talked about micro movements and things that we can do while we're on the rising there. I don't know if you want to do some of that with Laurie quickly, just to kind of give ourselves a little bit of freedom and allow ourselves to kind of get out of that tension that we get stuck in our box for so long.
Well, I think that being able to process all of the little changes that we've talked about will take you there. I don't think it's the kind of thing where there's a magic fix to what we used to do and now we're going to do this.
Darn.
I know you wanted that. And I said that already. So it's not that simple.
I know.
But I think really, if you can just start with a little bit of yes and a little bit of no. And we didn't really talk about the jaw because the jaw, once you have your head in balance, the jaw finds a much more neutral place, and it's much easier to sing from there.
Yes.
So we don't need to open the jaw. I deal with a lot of people who have issues with their jaw because they're opening their jaw too much. Well, my teacher says I'm supposed to open my mouth. Okay, well, you can open your mouth without straining your jaw and still get resonating space inside without going like that.
Right.
So once you've made that little bit of a change here, and then you've released your jaw to find its neutral place, you've eliminated some of the tension. Okay, same thing with hip distance apart instead of shoulder distance apart. If you just do the checklist, maybe we should be making a checklist.
Yeah.
AO joint. So a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of ya. And that's our AO. Okay, then find the lumbar. And the other one I really like to do that we can do is we can do kind of a spinal warm. I did this spiral. I did this with, I just worked with the Rick instrumental conducting student. So we start standing, and because they're going to be dealing with different instrumentalists on different sides, we just find that balance of the dynamic balance in standing and just spiral to the right and spiral to the left. You can do it without swinging your arms. I mean, a conductor is going to be using their arms, but you can really try to find the spiral nature of the torso and allow that movement. And you can even do it with your arms by your sides if you don't want to swack your neighbor. But allowing the torso to spiral and finding the balance. Number one, it feels really good.
Are you
number two, what?
Are you moving your feet?
I am not.
Not at all.
I'm not moving my feet. I'm just using the spiraling nature of the torso to move over my balanced feet and really find that place of dynamic balance with the head and the torso. And what I am doing is bending my knees a little bit to make sure that my hips aren't locked.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Doesn't that feel good?
Do that.
So I think, again, if you just make a checklist and try a bunch of different things, some things will resonate more strongly. I mean, for the people who do this, the head balance thing is going to be huge.
Yeah.
And until they can be comfortable with that, they may not be able to get to the feet. So it's really it's a sort of a building blocks thing.
But building from top down, as you've said.
Well, there's a lot of talk lately about bottom up, but I feel like it's much easier to start with the information about the head. All you have to do is show people that.
Yeah.
And because we're all doing this with the screen in front, I think that's the most helpful thing.
Right.
Until you're back on the risers, I think this is a better place to start. Yeah.
Sometime soon.
Yes, I'm hoping.
Please,
I
God.
hope to be sitting in front of you very soon.
Yeah.
So does anybody have any questions? Is it time for questions?
Yeah. So Laurie, I mean, unless you have any other questions for Jane, it was really awesome to have you. Thank you for joining us and being a third on this.
Thank you. It's so helpful to have somebody to work directly with.
Yeah, fantastic. I really appreciate your advice. It's just so it just another, like you have a whole nother set of language and visuals that, you might hear bits and pieces from other people, but like it just reawakens everything that maybe you knew, but you forgot. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. All right. Thanks for being with us, Laurie.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Laurie.
Bye-bye now.
Nice comments from everybody.
So let's see if there's any questions for Jane on anything right now. We've dealt with standing on the risers, the tripods of the feet, freeing up tension from our head to our onto our neck, holding our binders.
And try this. Borrow a ball from your dog and try moving your feet on a ball. It feels so good, number one, but it really helps because look at the feet. Look at all the bones. You have all these bones in your feet that need to be able to move. And once you free them up to move, it feels so good. So I have to go give this back to my dog now. He was like, where are you going with that?
All right. Well,
any questions? No questions?
There don't seem to be any questions right now, but as we've talked about, I mean, you typically would do a 6-hour series on this, and we've done an hour and 19 minutes or so. So we're barely scratching the surface of this, material. And it's wonderful at least to be aware, which is the whole point of it, right? Is being more aware, trying to listen to our bodies, to tell what we're feeling and figure out where we might be misaligned between what we think we're feeling and what we're actually feeling. So
yeah, somebody asked about breathing, and that's a whole nother hour.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about whether we wanted to go into that. So maybe another time down the road, we can do a breathing one, because that's a whole other thing. But and if I may say, be careful, because posture is a tricky word, because the root of posture is position, which implies static or lack of movement. So if we can start using the word dynamic balance instead of posture, and not sitting up straight, but sitting in balance, all of that terminology makes such a difference.
Yeah.
And again, watch out for that holy jargon.
So
I was taught to try to feel your body rooted to where you were standing like a tree. Again, maybe not the most helpful advice for a musician, because we are always moving. Trees are not. Maybe they are, but not like we are. So again, this is where the holy jargon comes in, and I hear it from even the most experienced musicians. I had an opera singer who came to me for lessons. She did not know where her lungs were. Now, she was a professional opera singer, sang all over Europe. She didn't know where her lungs were. So it's not, we all have mismappings. And the more information we've been given about how to do it from somebody who doesn't understand the anatomy, the harder it is to sort of change your language. But you can do it.
Yeah. Well, I think the idea of doing another session on this is fantastic, especially dealing with breathing and all of that. And we are quite likely going to need to continue this series into the spring. So we'll have a lot more Wednesday nights available. So we'd love to have you back.
I'm not doing anything.
If anyone would like to find out more, you can email Jane at ehdamore, which is English horn d'amore, at gmail.com. Or you can visit her website at janeobo.com, www.janeobo.com, and we'll send out that information as well in an email. But it has been a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you again for opening our minds to this, Jane, and getting us thinking in a new way.
Thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I wish I could see you all.
Yes.
But I feel your love, and I miss you all terribly, and thank you.
Thank you.
I do give private lessons. So you can email me and we can set something up. And it's pretty easy to do Zoom, actually, because again, there's no touching anyway. So private lessons work pretty well in this format, better than I thought that they would. Better than oboe lessons, that's for sure.
So there you go. You can reach out and get a direct one-on-one from Jane. And thank you to all of you for watching us tonight. Thank you again to the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts for all of their support. We have a great show coming up next week as well with our own Catherine Aaron, our assistant conductor, who is going to take us on a trip through the music and the history of the Mozart's Great Mass in C minor.
Oh, it's my favorite piece.
Which is what we were supposed to be doing.
I was so excited. I love that one.
And we will also be featuring, again, just as in George Kent's lecture, some of our own performance from the 1998 show that we did there, from the archival recording that we have as a part of the lecture for examples from that. So please join us for that one. We look forward to seeing you again. And once again, thank you very much for being with us, Jane. Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.